Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new, relatively new, sort of new, not as new as usually I review things, but hey, I'm gonna review it anyway. Daymé Arocena's Cubafonia. This is the latest full-length album from Cuban singer, songwriter, instrumental arranger, Daymé Arocena, who has been pretty prolific in the short amount of time she has been releasing albums under her own name. Back in 2015, she released her Nueva Era album, a record which I received a CD promo for. I was very impressed with her vocal chops, but found the instrumentation to be a little hollow, a little lacking at points, despite the clear attempt to do something a little bit more experimental and edgy than your usual Latin jazz release, especially with some of the darker, moodier chord progressions on this thing and very strange vocal layering. But I ended up just passing this CD off to my wife because she seemed to enjoy it a little bit more than me, and she's been digging on her ever since, here and there, and lo and behold, she's telling me now, she's turning me onto stuff. She's saying, hey, did you know this artist has been releasing some music last year? And I was like, no, I didn't know that. Is it any better than the album that I gave you? Because I was really hoping that the instrumental game would kind of be upped a little bit on whatever she released into the future, because the vocals were really good. It seemed like she had kind of a unique thing going, but it wasn't totally like, you know, fully realized. Turns out in 2016, she dropped a much jammier, much more improvisational jazz record, which I actually found to be more impressive. That record being titled One Takes, but this follow-up project, Cubafonia, this is nice. So nice, I actually regret not talking about it, and now I am coming on here to rectify that, because this is my YouTube channel and I will do whatever the hell I want to do. The instrumentation on this thing is a fantastic combination of funk and rumba and Latin jazz. Of course, you're getting those hot Latin horns on this thing, that hand percussion, those Cuban grooves as well. Of course, every once in a while these are elevated with a shot of very elegant strings or some very well arranged background vocals. The songs on this thing stick pretty closely to a verse, chorus, verse format. They're not super long-winded jazz tunes, but there still is an incredible amount of strong playing on this record, even though it seems that the songs and just the directness of these tunes do take priority, because there is quite a bit of flashy playing and performances on this thing to keep the songs sounding at least a little intricate and intense, dense, you know, enough for the jazz heads. But really the main appeal of this record for me comes down to Arocena's voice, which is so powerful, has so much character. I mean, with every record she's released so far, it's really been her voice that has been the selling point of the project, but now that we have this flood of louder and more vibrant and more versatile instrumentation on this album over here, it really gives her an amazing foundation to work off of and just show off everything that her voice has to offer. Everything from the very quiet and precious Valentine, which is an incredibly lovely ballad in the track listing here, to all the feverish scatting which she does over these mathematical Latin rhythms on the track La Rumba Me Llamo Yo. Of course, going into this thing, there were some songs that was kind of lukewarm on, but even some of those managed to win me over eventually, like the track Maybe Tomorrow. A track that does have a very pretty melody, Maybe Tomorrow, but it does have kind of a musical theater aesthetic to it that does turn me off a little bit. The band plays the song pretty straight. The string sections on the track just really lift Daymé's vocals up to soaring highs, all of which is pretty nice, but I still would have preferred something with a bit more instrumental muscle. Still though, it is nice to hear how she sort of vocally dominates a song even of this style. And I guess my last point on this front is that the song Como is probably the album's only moment where for me, it sort of oversteps that line into making overly elegant, overly smooth ballroom jazz music, though I do like the splash of R&B influence that I think turns up in the vocal melody of that track. But when it comes to low-key moments on this thing, I think I do enjoy the track Angel so much more. Or Angel, I'm sorry, I'm terrible at pronouncing things. I do love how minimal and how stripped back and just how subtle that track is at moments, to the point where it's almost just like creepy. But more often than not on this thing, the heat is on high, especially on tracks like the very tight and uniquely grooved Mambo Nama. A good part of the intro and a few other passages here are dominated by this octave oompa, 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 oompa. Again, one of the many more thrilling musical moments on this thing. The album finishes up very well too. It's Not Gonna Be Forever has some very fun and joyous group vocals, fantastic Latin rhythms and horns on there too. Pretty much everything you would typically expect out of a Latin jazz track, but just delivered with this contemporary vibrance. So while sure it's not one of the more original tracks in the bunch, it's still an incredibly fun listen. And the closing track, Valentine, I already mentioned earlier, is one of the cutest and most fun tracks on the entire record. Doesn't really add anything too much thematically to the album as an ending, but it's still a beautiful song, and overall I just kind of see this album as a collection of just beautiful Latin jazz tunes, with good performances, great production, and very tasteful and creative references to the worlds of pop and funk and a myriad of other things throughout. There may be a few tracks on here that I wished had a bit more bite, or I wished had a bit more development, like the track Todo por Amor, which I feel like I can't be the only person who felt like the song ended a bit abruptly, like given its pacing, that it felt like it was going somewhere else, like it had a little bit more to it. But outside of that, I just really love this record. I love Daymé's voice. I love the production and performances on this thing. I think it's a great balance of sounding like it would appeal to a pop audience because the instrumentation is very clear, it's very full, it's very bright. The choruses on this thing really pop, but yet, you know, there's enough instrumental flash and spark there to keep it from feeling like just a mere jazz pop record. And it just sucks that I didn't hear it and I didn't cover it earlier, because it just probably would have been my favorite jazz release of last year. But you know, I guess what happens, happens. I'm feeling a light to decent 8 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Just leave a thoughtful comment in the comments if you're feeling full of thoughts. I'll see you in the next one. Anthony Fantano, Daymé Arocena. Forever. I think forever.